Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancy Street. Today is Monday, February 15th, 2021, and this is episode 5A. As this is a Monday episode, I will be talking about comics and comics culture. Specifically, I'm going to start off with WandaVision episode 6, which premiered this past Friday. I have quite a bit of things I want to talk about this episode. There's a lot of theories and whatnot going around the internet, as well as my own, that I'm very excited about. And then, of course, I have the comics culture segments, which are going to include an explanation of the term that I have been using on this podcast. I'm trying to get it to catch on more. The term is sweaty. I'll go through explaining what that means and where it comes from. I will discuss the Joss Whedon scandal because I would honestly feel bad not discussing that. That's something that's very important in comics culture. It's really important in comics culture, I would say, right now. And then, of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League trailer officially dropped yesterday, Valentine's Day, so I'll go through that just a bit. And then I have kind of a fun, but not really fun, FYI about artist pay scales in the industry. And then, since BatCat number 3, Batman Catwoman number 3 is coming out this week, I'm going to break down that series and Tom King's saga for those two characters and their relationship. Since it is a little confusing for some people, if they haven't kept up from all of Tom King's stuff, I'm going to break that down. And finally, I will go through a brief list of comics that I am looking forward to personally this week. It's not all the things that I'll be reading, and it's definitely not all the comics that are coming out, but it's just some of the things that I am looking forward to. So that will be this week's Monday episode. Again, this is episode 5A on Monday, the 15th of February, and we are going through comics and comics culture. So let's go ahead and get this shindig going. We'll start off, of course, with the news of the hour, and that is always going to be, until it's over, WandaVision. This week we had episode 6, which premiered on Friday the 12th. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't recommend listening to this because I'm going to spoil the heck out of it, as I always do. This was a really, really cool episode. So much happened. We learned a lot. We have a lot to work with in terms of theorizing now. One funny thing that kind of came out of this episode was my husband in the morning afterwards, or I guess it was after we watched it, he takes his phone and he looks in his online chat with people who are watching his nerd group or whatever it is, and he laughs and he says the first thing he got, somebody tagged him in the spoiler channel, I don't think Mephisto has very much to do with this anymore, guys. Which was pretty funny, because everybody kind of thought this was Mephisto doing this to Wanda, and it's like, it's super clearly not. This is very much Wanda. And I'm loving every minute of it. Although I will say, I do think Mephisto could still be involved, and I'll kind of go into that in a second. But this episode, it is the 90s, early 2000s Malcolm in the Middle style episode. It was filmed in part with Tommy and Billy narrating at the camera, the way that they did in that show, in certain moments of it. Kind of the way that they moved on to do in other adult shows like Parks and Rec and whatnot. But I think definitely Pietro is not Pietro. We know he's the Foxman Pietro physically because that's who Evan Peters played, but it has, I think, become super, super clear now that him being that actor is only for our benefit. There is nothing in the show about this, that he's not a Pietro from another universe. I'm convinced of that now. One thing that's interesting, there was an image that was leaked of some kind of, I guess, 3D sculpt model, or possibly figure or statue, or maybe even a partially finished 3D rendering for a TV show, that looked like Mephisto. It was very clearly Mephisto, actually, but it bared a striking resemblance to a certain Evan Peters. I think that you can kind of go either way on it, if it's really Evan Peters or not, if we're being honest. But it'd be really cool if that kind of is. Now, Pietro has been getting, I would say, a little too chaotic at times. For me to really believe that he's himself. He goes into this is what you wanted me to be. The brother who comes in and causes problems, whatever it was, that's not really what she wanted when she summoned him there, if that's really what it was. Again, him being the Foxman Pietro is clearly just for our benefit at this point. I don't think he's Pietro from another universe. I think this is someone using the body or image and memories of Pietro from this world, but I'm pretty much convinced it's not him. He does make the joke about, what's your accent? Or is what happened to your accent? And she says, what happened to your accent? And he goes, what happened to yours? Which is the joke. I think that works two ways, of course, that she did have the accent in Age of Ultron and then didn't afterwards. But also there's the joke that a lot of fans have the question of, yeah, what did happen to Wanda's accent? We never really, got an explanation for that. It's not necessarily something we need an explanation for, but people kind of questioned it, and so it was really funny to me that they kind of came and brought that in like a joke. He also remembers a Halloween from their childhood, which on the second viewing, we discovered that was actually him and his sister Wanda dressed up as Black Widow and Nick Fury. If you go back and look, that is definitely a redhead with some kind of antennae, which I think that's supposed to be Black Widow for sure. And then he is dressed up as a dude with an eye patch, and that's definitely supposed to be Black Widow and Nick Fury. So whether that's a statement on them having appeared in that country when they were children, Sokovia, or just a fun throwaway thing for the fans, either way, that's pretty fun as well. Little details like that. He also says that when he came back, Pietro says that he heard her voice and knew that she needed him. I feel like that could also leave a lot of room for somebody else heard her voice calling out to him or mentioning him or whatever, knowing that she wanted him and taking advantage of that and slipping in instead of actually Pietro because he's dead. Towards the end of the episode, he goes into his knowledge of what all of this is, the whole I thought you wanted to be the chaotic brother. He's definitely as much on the outside of all of this as her. He's not affected by it. He's playing a role that he thinks he should be playing based on where he's suddenly appeared in. Just kind of going along with it. He's definitely not under her control. But also, I had this thought on the rewatch, this can't possibly be him. Her powers slipped off of him towards the end of the episode, and she saw him as the dead body that he really is. But she never got his body. At least we never saw her get his body, and she recast him, but didn't go get that body. So how is that body recast if that physical body would be the other Pietro? You see what I'm saying here? She couldn't have pulled him from another universe. I mean, I guess technically you could say that she pulled him from a universe we haven't seen that was a crossover kind of the Foxmen and the MCU. Or it could be a plot hole. That could be me reading way too far into things. But that's kind of where I'm at with everything. For Pietro, I just think it's not him. That's my main thing. I definitely think that's not actually Pietro. Other things that happened in the episode that were super, super cool. The twins got their powers. We have Tommy running all over the place, being the speedster kid that he is. And Billy he's able to stop Tommy when he is running towards him, probably to harass him the way brothers do. And he is able to hear his father outside of the Hex calling for help. Now, I just want to explain really quickly. The Hex is what they call Wanda's dome thingy. It took me way too long to catch on to that, so I'm just explaining that for anybody else who didn't catch on to that. The Halloween costumes for the twins, Tommy and Billy, are more or less their costumes from the comics, and that extends to all of the 5 family members, Quicksilver included. It was very, very cute. I kind of want to get the little pops that they have of the Halloween versions of Wanda and Vision. Also, I'm willing to bet that we're going to get some action figures from Hasbro based on all of these. I'm on the fence about Hasbro action figures. That is a topic for a whole other podcast post, but that'll be fun. Anyway, another thing that was interesting about the twins in this episode, Wanda does tell them don't go past Ellis Avenue. That to them probably doesn't sound very spooky, but to us, we know that there's something else going on here. I had a theory last week about Agnes, that because she made some comments about referring to herself starting parts of the episode over and trying, the scene again, that possibly that was her having some further insight into things. However, this episode, some further neighbors made similar comments, and that's going aside from Pietro and his being completely on the outside of it. So I think that theory doesn't quite hold up. The theory I have is still kind of there, but this reasoning doesn't hold up. We learned on the outside of the Hex that Hayward is tracking Vision, and he also has the ability to see other kinds of residents of Westview inside the Hex. He's obviously a Skrull. Come on, there's no way he's not a Skrull. We have a history of, let's call it, secret agencies in comic books who are run by secretly bad people. And that's definitely falling in line here. So him tracking Vision and being able to sort of see the other residents of Westview but not having ever told anybody about this leans super hardcore to this dude's up to no good, and just backs up my theory that he's a Skrull even more. It just makes so much sense at this point with Secret Invasion coming in a few years. They also acknowledge that people... it was a discovery of Darcy, I believe, that she discovered people breaching the Hex's perimeter have mutations in their physical cells. Their bodies are changing, so obviously this is how Wanda's gonna get... Excuse me, I said Wanda. This is how Monica's gonna get her powers. That's cool. That's exciting. So I guess we pretty much have it confirmed now that Monica doesn't have powers. She is well known, it seems, in the... What are we gonna call this? Hero undercover group community, by being, I guess, the captain of SWORD here, but she doesn't have powers, so we're definitely going to see her. My theory is she's going to be going in and out trying to save people, and that's how that repetitive going in and out is every time she goes in and out, passes through the Hex. Her cells are going to change, and she will eventually get her powers that way. It's also possible that she figures out some way to tear the Hex apart, because that is technically in the comics how she gets her powers. Not with any kind of magical thing. It's an electrical grid of some sort that she physically attacks and rips apart, and it kind of like blasts her off, and that's how she gets her powers. So possibly that they're going to go that direction with her possibly physically attacking the Hex. After that, Monica, Wu, and Darcy all get kicked off the base, once again because Hayward is a goddamn Skrull. I'm telling you, this man is a Skrull. Even though they got caught off the base, things don't go super well for them. I'll get into that in a second. More interestingly, possibly though, Monica does mention she has a contact who might be able to help them. Theories abound. Now, my favorite theory, and my personal theory, and my personal wish is, God, this would be so cool. Adam Brashear, Blue Marvel. Now, Adam Brashear is a older character from Marvel Comics. He's been around for a good long while. He and Monica do have a history. They, I think, were most recently dating. If you read Marvel Comics 1000. Oh, no, it wasn't Marvel Comics 1000. It was Incoming. That was the other anthology one they put out at that time. If you read the Incoming book, which was supposed to start this whole era of Empire and further events into that time, that had, I believe, Monica was still dating the Blue Marvel in his underground facility. And also before that, of course, in Al Ewing's series, the Ultimates and Ultimates 2, they were team members on the Ultimates together. So, Adam Brashear, Blue Marvel, that is my bet, that is my guess, that is my wish. Other theories. Someone that could link us to Falcon and Winter Soldier, possibly Rhodey. We know that he's going to be appearing in it. One theory my husband had was maybe it's possible that she is dating Rhodey. Monica might be dating Rhodey instead of Carol, because we as you know currently in the comics, Carol is dating Rhodey. That's actually about to blow up in their faces, and I'm interested to see how that goes. But it'd be a very interesting twist, especially with the very uncomfortable relationship that Carol and Monica definitely must have if Monica ends up dating Rhodey instead of Carol, and also Carol and Rhodey had that kind of like flirtatious moment in Endgame. That would make it even more complicated, and I love it. So cool theory there, but still I'm on the Adam Brashear train. I was thinking, I don't even know, is Coulson alive after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I honestly didn't pay attention to the last couple of seasons of that show. I have no idea what happened. And then I realized, shit, it might be Quake. We know Quake. It's been confirmed that Quake, I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed that Quake is going to be in Secret Invasion, Daisy Johnson. Damn, man, what if it's like an inner Secret Service industry thing where you get the ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. Quake and then you get the SWORD Monica? It makes sense that they would know each other. It makes complete sense that they would know each other. So that's really exciting, but also, again, I have no idea how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended. I imagine she's alive if she's going to be in Secret Invasion, but we'll see, or I should probably check. It's probably not going to be Stephen Strange. There was a few theories of him running around. I don't see any reason for her to know him or for him to know her, so that kind of is out of left field. Even more out there theory, I believe, would be Reed Richards. People are super onto that one, though. I think it's far too early to bring Reed Richards into the MCU or any Richards Fantastic Four member. We are not going to see them until after we get Secret Invasion, is what it sounds like. So there's no reason to see just one of them right now. And if we're going to get just one of them, goddamn, I would not want it to be Reed. But I still think Adam Brashear is the contact. So we also found out that in the last episode, of course, Wanda makes the claim to Vision that she can't command every moment of every person's day. I had said that that was a lie, and now it's becoming a bit clear that wasn't a lie. She was telling the truth. However, that doesn't mean that she can't control them and doesn't have any kind of, magical power over them. So instead, because she can't command every moment of every person's day, the people towards the outskirts of the town, she just has to limit the amount of energy she spares for them. And so she just commands them, her powers, the limited powers she can use for them, she just commands them to do simple, repetitive, endless tasks over and over all day long. And then the ones who are even further onto the outskirts, they're not even moving. They're just standing there. And there was a really incredibly dark moment where you see the woman who is perpetually attaching a shirt or something to a laundry line outside her house, just moving her arm back and forth in that one repetitive motion over and over, probably for all day long, because that's all Wanda can spare the magic for her to control her. And you see the single tear drip down her face. Oh my god, these people are alive in there. Oh my god. And we know in the last episode also, because Vision woke up the guy in his office, that the dude is inside his head alive, panicking. Wanda's doing this to us, he tells him. Like, this is, oh my god. They know that they are stuck in these tiny little lifeless loops, not able to control their own bodies. They're trapped in their minds. This shit is dark, man. Oh, and how cool. I'm loving it. This is crazy. I love it. Vision, of course, has himself completely out of her mind control at this point and is witnessing all of this at the edge of the town, at the edge of the town's outskirts. And he encounters in a car there Agnes, who was trying to do something. She said she was trying to find the town square. Super suspicious. I think she was trying to escape or send some kind of message to the outside. Still think she could be working with Mephisto. She clearly didn't grow up in this town, Westview, the way that she claims she did, which is something that Vision points out to her. And when he snaps her out of her little Wanda mind thing, she does this. She tells him that, first of all, she seems kind of off, and she asks, "Oh, are you here to help?" And it seems very fake. Very like she was acting in that moment. And then after that, they kind of get into it for a minute, and she says that Wanda won't even let them think about leaving, and goes into this crazy witch cackle, which I am convinced even more now that she is a witch in real life. Outside of the hex, she would be. And she is completely up to something, whether that's Mephisto or not. We are yet to see that. But we haven't seen her husband or her house, both of which she talks about all the time, and neither of which had made an appearance. So it's very curious. I'm wondering what the frick is up with Agnes. Also in that interaction, Vision asks Agnes what an Avenger is. So she messed up his head. She went in there and took out a lot of memories, preventing him from basically having anyone to turn to besides Wanda. So how nice of her to make them just a very private couple, just the two of them. He just goes to her when he has problems. That's going to be a problem itself. So he has now broken through and discovered the truth, and now he is breaking out of the hex in this episode to discover the real truth, what he is in, and that it is all powered by Wanda's magic. In that moment when he's trying to get out, of course, things that are powered by her magic on the inside are removed on the outside, more or less. Except for the things that she physically transforms. So now remember, Vision's dead. So as he comes out of the hex, we see that he starts fading away. But if you could see very clearly, the Mind Stone stayed in place. So while he was having his basically falling apart, because that's all he is now, in reality, the Mind Stone is still there. So is it possible that Wanda took a Mind Stone from another universe to power Vision? We don't know. We will hopefully be seeing that, but that's an interesting theory that I saw somebody point out. I'm kind of curious if that is something they were going to pick up on at the end of the season. And also, we're not really sure. We saw a body earlier in the season when her magic slipped off of him for a moment. And we saw that nasty, awesome hole in his head from Thanos. We saw that, but then we see he's kind of, as he exits the hex, the body doesn't just become lifeless. He kind of starts falling apart and chunks of him start coming off. So I'm really curious why his body reacted that way. Was it her magic trying to pull him back into it? Just the two of them, his power versus her magic, trying to fight each other, get away. She tries to keep him and he's trying to escape. And of course, Darcy tries to come and help him and is not allowed to because, once again, Hayward is a Skrull! If you didn't hear me earlier. The hex starts expanding after all of this. Of course, Billy tells his mother what is going on at the outside of the hex, and she goes and expands the hex. Darcy gets caught into the hex, and now we are wondering, what is the next episode gonna be? Is it gonna be The Office, or is it gonna be How I Met Your Mother? Either way, there's obviously a ton of shows also that appeared in that era, aside from those two. So any number of shows, it might be mid-2000s kind of thing, early 2000s. I'm not really sure. I'm excited to see, but it's going to be fully in color, as was this one, and it's going to be a lot more characters inside the hex. So, that being said, the hex expanded. We saw the outer skirts of the hex. She couldn't really keep all those people. Well, she was keeping them under her control, but she couldn't keep up with them. So they were just kind of standing there. Now, the hex expanded, and it's clearly not going to be just a bunch of people who are just standing there. Why would she bother expanding the hex? I feel like her powers are definitely expanding with this. It's either her powers are expanding, or she's only just discovering just how goddamn powerful she really is. It's kind of crazy, scary, powerful, but she seems to be able to do a lot more in each episode, really, as we go along. She's getting a lot more confident, and after she expanded the hex, they do that zooming in on her glowing red eyes. Wanda's not tired at all, honey. She could do this shit all day. This is gonna be really interesting. We have now 3 more episodes left. This was episode 6. We have 7, 8, and 9 left. I think we have 2 more sitcom episodes, or was it 1 more? I lost track. I'm not gonna lie, I lost track. It's either 2 or 1 more. I think we're gonna see this contact from Monica either in the next episode or in episode 8. I think it'll be definitely before episode 9 for sure. I think we're going to find out who Evan Peters is really portraying in WandaVision. It's not Quicksilver / Pietro. I think we're going to find out that true identity in episodes 8 or 9 as well. This next episode, I think, is probably going to be a lot of going inside the Hex to see the stuff that has now been added into it. We know there was very, very much of the sword people got sucked into that. I'm actually not sure. I'm pretty sure Hayward got out, but it's at least Darcy who's in there. I don't know if Monica ended back up in there or Wu. But I'm really curious how this is going to be. This is getting really, really exciting. We're getting a lot more reveals as we go along further. And this is just going to get crazier and crazier as we go. So keep up with WandaVision. 2 somewhat interrelated things that I'm going to talk about today are the Zack Snyder Justice League trailer and the Joss Whedon scandals. They are kind of interconnected because, of course, Zack Snyder's original Justice League movie, his daughter unfortunately committed suicide mid-production, and he dropped out of the filming for obvious reasons, and Joss Whedon was picked up to replace him. There was quite a bit of things that were changed, and these are the things that I'm most excited of seeing in the Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is coming out, I believe, in March. It's going to be about 6 hours. Things that Joss Whedon had removed from his version of the Justice League once he took over that Zack Snyder had been really gung-ho about putting in there included Ray Fisher parts, which is part of the Joss Whedon scandal I'll get into in a second, Wally and Iris scenes, Darkseid's mother apparently, no black suit Superman, and then there was a few more things, smaller stuff, like the line about 100 years that Wonder Woman's been away, which could explain a little bit of why that bit of Wonder Woman 84 didn't make sense why she was there, because he just kind of threw that in there. But based on Zack Snyder's Justice League trailer, there's not really a whole lot of new stuff we saw. They put out the teaser, and I talked about the teaser on my Friday episode 4B. There was some cool stuff. We didn't actually get any new things with this trailer. This was kind of just a trailer that was a combination of the original trailer they put out and have now taken down, and the teaser that we just saw the other day. I'm not sure why they took down that original trailer, and now they're calling this the first trailer, so whatever. Whatever makes you happy, Zack Snyder. They're giving you apparently everything that you want for this movie, and hopefully that'll mean that it's stupendous. So, didn't see a whole lot of new stuff for this trailer. We already talked about Granny Goodness in the last episode, which, by the way, if you want to hear any more about Granny Goodness and get some context on who she is as a character, I would recommend reading Mr. Miracle, the original series, issue 9, as well as Female Furies by Cecil Castellucci and Adriana Mello. That was a 6-issue series that goes over the Female Furies, of course, and a hell of a lot of information on Granny Goodness and her dynamic with the people and rulers of Apocalypse. I can't really recommend that series enough. I've read it twice. It's stark. It is quite a thing to read. It hits you with moments that will have you thinking about them for a long time. But anyway, Black Suit Superman is something that we're obviously getting in this. But I have some questions here. Why did they make Steppenwolf look more alien than Darkseid? And as part B of that, why did they make his head look like a hammerhead shark? That is like, they had it really cool for a while. In the comics, his hat is just his hat. His head doesn't stick out on the sides. Why did they do that? Of course, the Joss Whedon version had a very much toned down version of Steppenwolf. And while I would say that this Zack Snyder version looks to be a step in the more correct direction, the head thing, I think we could have done without a scene without his helmet on if that's what his head looks like, because that shit's weird, okay? That's just weird. Like I said before, I'm personally most curious about the parts that we know Whedon eased back on, specifically Ray Fisher's cyborg story arc. We were supposed to get a lot more of that. Wally and Iris scenes, the Black Suit Superman, etc. But I think that the moments that are going to be the true deciding factors, and if this will be a success for me, is going to be the bigger moments that we have been promised and haven't seen very much of yet, like the Green Lanterns and Martian Manhunter. We're supposed to be seeing those in this epic vision of Zack Snyder's full Justice League movie film experience. So that will determine for me if those appear, and if they appear well, that will determine for me if this is a success or just kind of an expanded version of the first Justice League movie. Now, connected to that, like I said, is the Joss Whedon scandal. Some time ago, it came out from Ray Fisher that on the Justice League set, after he took over from Snyder following his daughter's tragic suicide, Joss Whedon was inappropriate, extremely inappropriate on set. If you can hear noises in the background, that would be my cat once again. Actor Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg, had accused Joss Whedon of being, quote, gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable to him and others on the set of Warner Brothers' Justice League film. Now, in the past couple of days only, there have been women from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show, as well as Angel, and I think a few other shows that Joss Whedon helmed and created, who have come out and make similar statements. And it's actually very interesting because some of the women who are on those shows have actually come out in response to these statements, saying that they are so infuriated by his actions, they don't even want to be associated with his name in order to discuss what happened in their experiences. It was also very interesting that one of these women came forward to confirm that the women of Buffy the Vampire Slayer stood together in a group apparently and agreed that they will not allow Joss to be in a room alone with actress Michelle Trachtenberg, I probably said that wrong, ever again. You can imagine what that means, okay? You don't need to have a very crazy imagination to figure that one out. And then, of course, the newest news update on this we had this morning was David Boreanaz, gosh, I butchered that. He played Angel in Buffy. He came out in support of the actresses from the show and their experiences, and he said that he will stand with them and everything that they say and have to, anything else going forward. So really, really excellent on him to do that stellar move as an ally to these ladies. Now, Joss Whedon worked on a lot of really popular shows, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course, Angel, Firefly, Dollhouse, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, I'm really curious. We have at least 3 of those actors from 3 of those 5 shows have come forward, and I'm really curious if any of the other actresses or actors from the other shows, especially Firefly, are going to come forward and say anything. Firefly and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are the ones that I'm most curious about. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being relevant in the Marvel Universe still, and Firefly being a pretty much legendary show that has very, very high quality standards from the viewers at that point. So I would be very, very interested to hear if that was due to a toxic environment, or if it wasn't, and what is the difference between why he made Buffy a toxic environment but not Firefly or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's all things I'm very interested in. Of course, his racism has been addressed with this Ray Fisher, and also the Iris, whatever her maiden name is, Iris West is how I know her, Wally West's girlfriend. It's something that, happens a lot. Apparently he took it was supposed to be more parts that they had in the Justice League movie that he actually took out. I guess they had already filmed them. Ray Fisher was supposed to have a much larger arc about Cyborg and his father, and we can kind of see the bits of that if you rewatch the Justice League movie. You can see where there was supposed to be more, but there wasn't. And you can also kind of see, it's funny to look, and there's several parts you can straight up identify. That's a Joss Whedon line. And they're not usually the good parts. So, really curious about the Joss Whedon stuff, how that's all going to play out. Of course, I am in support of these actresses because it's become all too clear that men in Hollywood have a habit of feeling like they are God and can do whatever they want. And just like the Olivia Wilde set policy of no assholes on set, it's because these guys in Hollywood, I don't know what to say guys, it's because these people in Hollywood think that they have to be a tortured artist to create good art. And I think that's actually what she said in explanation of that rule on her sets. And this is for Joss Whedon. He's probably one of those guys who thinks you have to be a tortured artist in order to create a good product. And that's just not true, and it's just not fair. So, this Joss Whedon stuff, I'm really interested how that's going to go. Zack Snyder's Justice League, as I said in the last episode, again, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm sure. Probably in 2 sittings, but I'm more curious. It's going to be we'll see if it's going to be a success, a true success for me in those bigger, more withheld moments that we have yet to actually see. Now, one thing that's going to take possibly a moment here for me to explain, we have Batman Catwoman #3 by Tom King and Clay Mann is coming out this week, actually tomorrow, the 16th of February, because DC decided to do Tuesday releases, because that's just, the petty kind of place they are now. So I want to go through and break down an explanation of what's happening in these what's happening in these issues, because it is 3 different time periods we're seeing, and how we kind of got to this point of him being able to lay out these 3 time periods the way that he does with Clay Mann, and have it make sense to the fans like me, who have read all of his stuff leading up to this point. So let's kind of go over that for a little bit. In my mind, basically, Batman and Catwoman's 12 issues are presumably wrapping up Tom King's Batman plan. So we'll start with, in Batman's 85 issues that he wrote, it was supposed to be 100, but of course people complained because they didn't understand what he was doing, and it became 85. But in his 85 issues that he wrote for Batman, we saw Bruce and Selina come together they came to the conclusion that a wedding wasn't going to make them any more in love, and they didn't really need any justification to stay together So they're just going to be together because that's who they are. In Batman Annual number 2, we saw Bruce and Selina's first kiss and their last kiss and the relationship that took place between it. It went from villain to vigilante to a loving partner at the deathbed of her husband. So it was a really interesting arc. It's probably one of my favorite single issues in all of comics. And it's worth noting that throughout the Tom King Batman and in this Batman Annual as well, and kind of into BatCat a little bit, there has always been this argument between Bruce and Selina of whether they have met on a boat, or on the street. And to kind of explain that, they met on the street in Frank Miller's Year One story, which started in, of course, this took place in Batman number 404, and they met on a boat in Bob Kane and Bill Finger's Batman number 1 80 years ago. That was her first appearance. So technically, they are both correct. I just love this little tidbit that Tom King put in there to tie in their true origins of both ways that you could look at their true origins. So then moving on from that, we also have Detective Comics 1027. That was a Tom King and Louise Simonson. Did I say Louise Simonson? Walt Simonson story that was made explaining Bruce Wayne's succumbing to cancer, which we see him dying in Batman Annual 2. And thanks that we see that he was succumbing to cancer, the explanation to that was because he had this encounter with the radioactive villain Dr. Phosphorus, who was created by Simonson. And it's a very unique story where they're fighting, and it's the monologue of Dr. Phosphorus at the end of the fight, going through the overlaying the fight, basically saying, no one will ever know it, but I killed Batman. And it's because he's fighting without his gloves on. He doesn't have any hand protection. So the radioactive energy of Dr. Phosphorus seeps into his skin through his hands. And, 40 years down the line, Bruce gets cancer and dies. And Dr. Phosphorus will always know he will be the reason that Batman dies. Even though no one else will probably ever know this, he will know, and that to him is the greatest victory. So then, of course, Batman Catwoman, we are seeing how Mask of the Phantasm is connected to the main DCU for the first time, including the Phantasm herself, Andrea Beaumont. So I hope that kind of explains a little bit of the eras and how this has been set up to get to this point in Batman Catwoman, so we can have things playing out the way that they are. Also, as I said before, Batman Catwoman does take place over 3 time periods. So that's their level prepares 3 time periods. And there are no breaks or clear indicators, so you really have to pay attention to the locations, background things, speech, text, outfits, faces, wrinkles, things like that. You have to follow that really closely to be able to follow which panels belong to which part of the story. Once you get the hang of it, though, it's really just like watching an episode of a TV show, because honestly, the same thing happens in TV. You get skipped from time period to time period, and it's up to you, usually, to kind of figure that out on your own. So the 3 time periods in Batman Catwoman are early love affair. They are villain and vigilante, Catwoman and Batwoman. Selina is working with a freshly released Joker, and she's lying to Bruce about it. And she's also lying to the Joker about, she's not lying to him, she's just hiding Bruce's secrets from the Joker so that he can't actually hurt Bruce while she's still doing what she does best and playing both sides a little bit. The modern love affair era is, I guess, following Tom King's 85 Batman issues, thereabouts. And that's Andrea has returned to Gotham in search for her son, who Batman and Catwoman unfortunately find dead by way of the Joker or his gang or Joker gas, something like that. It's Joker's fault, but Andrea, as Phantasm, hunts down all the Joker minions until the Joker is basically forced to turn himself into the Bat and the Cat, and that's where we're going to pick up, I believe, with him and this time period in the next issue tomorrow. The 3rd time period is the future, and it is just post Bruce's death, which takes place in Batman Annual number 2. And Selina drives off to Florida. She's already done all this. To visit the Ada Joker, and in issue number 2, she finally kills him for what he did to Andrea. It haunts her, and she talks about it in a way that makes me convinced it has a lot more to do with just the death of her son. That's obviously tragic, but the way Selina talks about Andrea and the torture she saw on her face and all these years ago and things like that. It's definitely more than that. And I kind of have a feeling that has to do with the family photos the Joker has on his mantle. Because what family does the Joker ever have? I feel like that just comes out of nowhere, and her interest in them in the first issue makes me think that maybe this is some kind of twisted, he gives her a son to replace the one that she lost, and then something, I don't know, we'll see. But I'm very interested in all of that. So that pulls together, I hope, makes it a little bit more sense for anybody who's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Reading the series yourself, you have to just pay attention and figure out the time periods, and once you figure out which time period is which panel for the first page or so, you can get it pretty easily for then. In this issue number 3, we're going to finally meet Helena, who is the daughter of Bruce and Selina, and she is Batwoman as an adult. She is not Huntress, which there is an Earth 2 reality where Batman and Catwoman got married and had a daughter who is Helena Huntress of that world, but this is not. She's his Batwoman, and her suit, designed by Clayman, is the perfect combination of the Bat and Cat suits. So that's super exciting. I can't wait to meet her. We first met her in Batman Annual number 2 when we see her at Bruce's death, we see her talking to her mother about how her various super friends who she's in contact with these days can't do anything for her father's cancer. So it's a really emotional story. I definitely recommend reading. If you don't want to read all 85 issues of his Tom King Batman, you don't have to understand the relationship anyway. Definitely read Batman Annual number 2. If you would like to get that little bit of insight, Detective Comics 1027 has the Tom King and Walt Simonson story featuring Dr. Phosphorus basically infecting him for his future death at an old age still, but still. And then that will be enough, hopefully, to get you to... And Mask of the Phantasm. I cannot forget Mask of the Phantasm. You gotta watch Mask of the Phantasm to understand Andrea Beaumont's relationship with Bruce Wayne. She is a very smart woman. She's very cunning, and she's extremely vengeful. So I'm just pumped up about what's gonna happen in the rest of the series. It's gonna be very, very fun for me. And for you, too, I hope. That's why I made this little clip. Now, before we get into something slightly heavier, I just want to do a slightly for fun, but also not very fun, look at the Marvel artist pay scale. A lot of creators will tell you that it is better financially to work not for the big two. Creator-owned stuff, you get to keep your creations, your characters who you make. And theoretically you get paid better, but here I have come into contact with this Schedule A. Upon the delivery of materials by talent to Marvel and Marvel's acceptance thereof, Marvel shall pay the talent as follows. Now, this is quite an interesting pay scale. Artists will probably be saddened by this a little bit. Penciling. Now, if you're a penciler, you will get $160 per page you pencil. Inking, you get $110 per page. Coloring, $90 per page. Cover pencils, $240 per page. Cover inks, $165 per page. And cover colors, $115 per page. Now, while that may sound like a lot, think about artists who only do one book per month. So they do, let's say, 18 pages of actual art at $160 a page. I'm not going to do that math right now, but it's not a buttload of money. They kind of have to work their butts off to get all of this done anyway. And due to the nature of comics, they often don't have time to do more than 1 or 2 books a month. And they often don't have time to do both the penciling, inking, and coloring, or any combination thereof. So that's why you often get pencilers, inkers, and colorers separately. I'd be curious to see if you are an artist who pencils and inks your own work, but hands it off to a colorer, or does all three, what your pay would be for these. I would imagine it would be combined, but knowing corporations the way they work, I have a feeling they would have some kind of special case where, no, you don't get the combined efforts, you get just some percentage of it. But I don't know that for real. But this is the real, modern, current, up-to-date pay scale for artists at Marvel, just in case you ever felt like knowing that. Now, a term that I use on this episode, on these podcasts, I try to sign off with it every week, is the term sweaty. I don't know if this is a term that other people kind of encounter yet or not. I've been trying to get it to catch on with people who I know, and I know my husband has as well. It's a wonderful term. Now, sweaty, to get sweaty about something means to get so creatively and ecstatically excited about this thing that you actually get, like, your heart starts pumping and you actually get kind of sweaty. For example, if you go to a comic book shop and dig through the long boxes and find some comic book gold hidden in there for $1 or $5 or whatever, the context is the Urban Dictionary example of the sentence would be, man, I got really sweaty in there looking at all those comics, stuff like that. It might sound stupid and cheesy, but I wanted to talk about this because I try to live and breathe this term. This podcast is me trying to sweat it out about comics twice a week as hard as I can. And this term is in my life because of a man named Jon Schnepp. He was quite a man. He was, if you look him up, he's credited as producer, director, voice actor, editor, writer, cartoonist, animator, and cinematographer. He is most famously documented for the film Death of Superman, Superman Lives, What Happened, which is a long title, but it's a documentary which he directed and wrote with his life partner. He also directed episodes of Metapocalypse, The Venture Bros, and a segment of the ABCs of Death. He did, Cartoon Network's Space Goat Coast to Coast. He directed the 2009 Deathlock tour with Mastodon, providing an animated accompaniment, and he helped write, after that, all 4 Deathlock comic books and design variant covers. He was a regular contributor for the AMC Movie Talk on YouTube, and what I mostly know him from is Collider, which has taken a turn these days, but he was part of Collider Movie Talk, Collider Nightmares, and Collider Heroes, which he hosted. I watched Collider Heroes for a very long time while he hosted it. He had some really excellent things to say, and what Jon Schnepp really meant to people like me was he was a person who was a full-grown, successful career adult who could still be the geek that all of us are at heart, He was all about accepting and embracing the things that you love and living through them and finding your passions and being extremely enthusiastic about the things that you're enthusiastic about and not hiding the fact that you love things, even if they originated as made for kids in the 1960s or whatever. He died, unfortunately, July 2018. I still get a little bit broken up talking about it because he was a great man. Jon Schnepp was someone who inspired me endlessly. I would compare his inspiration in my life to that of Stan Lee for people of an older, possibly more accessible to reach Stan Lee generation. As a creator, as a fan, as a host of a show, he put his all into everything, and he wanted everybody to embrace their weirdness and their nerdiness, and it is largely in part to Jon Schnepp that I created my website, turned my Instagram over to being comic book stuff, and have basically created this online persona that matches what I want to be in real life. Is I want to be, this person whose life kind of evolves around this industry, and so the term sweaty is something that he created. Now, if you are all interested in the documentary Death of Superman, it's called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. It's a very good documentary, and if you want to briefly kind of understand what happened with that, it was supposed to be Kevin Smith was supposed to be the writer originally. He pitched his script to producer John Peters. Now, John Peters, I'm going to go over him as a person because I just kind of clicked on his Wikipedia page out of, we'll see if anything comes up here, and what I saw was kind of amazing. This man has been married 5 times and divorced 4 times and annulled once. He married Pamela Anderson in 2020 and it got annulled 12 days later after they failed to file the paperwork. He made the worst rendition of Sandman that made Neil Gaiman actually come out and admit that it was the worst Sandman writing he had ever seen. He lost $3.3 million in a harassment/hostile workplace lawsuit in 2011. That gives you a pretty good image of the person we're working with here. Now, I know from interviews that I have heard that Kevin Smith said that he gave the script over to these guys, and the guy said, "Who is this Clark Kent and what does he have to do with Superman?" Now, I like to be a very accepting and involving person, so if you don't know, Clark Kent is Superman. His name is Kal-El, he's from Krypton. When he comes to Earth, he given the name Clark Kent. So there you go, now you know. Clearly, this person, Jon Peters, should not have been helming a Superman film if that was his question to the writer. Peters also did not want Superman flying around because he thought he would look like an overgrown Boy Scout. He wanted Superman to fight a giant spider in the 3rd act, and he also wanted, he commissioned a giant space dog that Brainiac could present Luthor purely for merchandising appeal and toy sales. That is actually something that is repeated, in late 1998 when they hire, I think this is their 3rd or 4th person on the film to write the script. And he split from creative differences, also citing the fact that they don't know comics, they don't understand the characters, pretty much saying everything that Kevin Smith said after he, years after he left the project and the project failed and all this stuff. Smith's script had a lot of really cool ideas. The script that they went with was, they ended up going with anything, but the script that they ended up using or wanting to use was completely different than that. Smith's casting choices included Ben Affleck as Clark Kent/Superman, which is pretty funny, due to him being the Batman slightly right now. And he also wanted Jason Mewes as Jimmy Olsen, John Mahoney as Perry White, Jack Nicholson as Lex Luthor, Famke Janssen as Mercy, some other funny kind of casting things. There's a lot more that went into this movie, but basically it wasn't until pretty much the year 2000 that they finally decided not to make this movie after starting in sometime, I think in 96. They went as far as to offer Will Smith the role of Superman, who turned it down, and apparently the final script had very similar elements to The Matrix. So I can't even imagine how bad that movie would have been if it ever appeared on screen. And I guess the last thing that you can wrap that up with is Nick Cage did cast as the voice of Superman in the animated Teen Titans Go film. So there was a little bit of, for him at least, there was a little bit of a wrap up for that. But anyway, that documentary, if you are at all interested in hearing more about this train wreck of a movie experience, was called The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened. So go and check that out. It was written and directed by Jon Schnepp, who I will probably always refer to as my personal Stan Lee. And I wish that I had met the man, because I could have told him that, and I'm sure that would have made his day. Or at least, hopefully, it would have made him smile. To lighten things up a little, we're going to finish this podcast on comic books that are coming out this coming week. This, again, is not everything that I am reading. It is also not everything that is coming out, which not nearly everything that is coming out. But just some things that I'm excited about. The Picture of Everything Else, this is going to be chronological, by the way. The Picture of Everything Else, #2, by Dan Waters and Kishore Mohan. #1 was a very fun indie #1 book. Basically, if you're aware of the Picture of Dorian Gray story, is this man Dorian Gray has this portrait of himself that, instead of himself aging and getting battle wounds and scars and wrinkles, the portrait gets all of this. And of course, when you kill the portrait, you kill him. So this, I guess, follows the serial killer who can draw portraits of anyone and then cut the portrait up, or whatever manner he destroys the portrait is the manner in which that person really dies. Really cool horror story. That's the main reason I'm getting into it, because I'm really interested in what are they gonna do about this guy. He is pretty much unstoppable, I would think. So it's really exciting. We have Future State Immortal Wonder Woman #2, which is more or less the wrap-up of the Immortal Wonder Woman story. My theory, of course, I think I've already mentioned a few times, is that Diana's going to sacrifice herself. Based on all of the teasers Jen Bartel has been putting out, I think it's probably going to be something like she sacrifices herself for the mere hope of possibly there being existence of humanity or life in the future. Like the last living cell on Earth or something she saves. I don't know. But I definitely think she's going to sacrifice herself. And also in that issue is the Nubia story, which is more of Nubia as Wonder Woman. Of course, I am super excited to see Nubia becoming the Wonder Woman in the upcoming Infinite Frontier DC stuff. I'm not sure how official that's going to be or who is going to acknowledge that, but I hope that it's pretty much and as many people as we can. Abbott 1973 #2 by Saladin Ahmed and Sami Kivelä. You don't have to be familiar with the original Abbott series to read this. I did not read the original Abbott series yet. I would like to. But the first issue was beautiful and completely understandable as it was. So go ahead and check that out if you are into mysteries and period comics, I guess you would say. Future State Catwoman #2 I'm mostly going to read because I'm trying to figure out if she's with Bruce or not in this time period. Talia is, of course, here to save Bruce from wherever he is, and in the Dark Detective series by Mariko Tamaki, everybody thinks he's dead. So I'm curious kind of, what are they working together, Selina and Talia, his baby mama and his wife? I don't know. That's what I want to find out. Future State Superman Worlds of War #2. The first issue I did a nice little review on. You can find it on my website. It was absolutely stunning. Showed the many different ways that Superman affects people's existence and the many different ideas of who he is across so many different people. Of course, he's actually on the war world fighting at Mongol's decree, I guess. And they also had in the first issue quite a bit of hate towards John Kent, who literally bottled up Metropolis because he thought that was a good idea. Yeah. But anyway, I'm excited for this issue #2. There'll be some other stories involved with it, so that's why it's got kind of a high price tag. I think it's got 3 or 4 stories in it. Then, of course, I've already talked about Batman Catwoman #3. The next Batman #4 by John Ridley. It's going to be the wrap-up of this first 4 issues of the Tim Fox Batman saga by John Ridley. And this is also going to include part 2 of Vita Ayala's, I guess you would say, Batgirl's story. We're going to find out what Oracle is doing in the basement, if she's under their control, or if she's sneaking out secret messages, or what. We've also got the King in Black #4, which, Donny Cates, if you're listening, you're not fooling anybody with these solicitations. I know they're just Kanye lyrics. Black Widow #5, the series started going off really strong. This is going to be an integral issue for me personally to see if Thompson can keep it up. Kelly Thompson is writing. Elena Casagrande is doing the art. What Thompson does next and how she has handled Natasha, things that have just happened, is going to be very interesting, and that is honestly going to determine for me if I feel like this series is going to be worth it going forward. Iron Man #6 by Christopher Cantwell and Kafu. I am here for Patsy. I'm not here for Tony, sorry bud. Patsy is in a rough spot. She needs Tony's help. Granted, it is kind of Tony's fault that she needs help, but the thing is, if you're going to take female characters through rough spots, she killed herself back in the early, what was it, the 90s or the 2000s? I honestly don't even remember, but I think it was the 90s, because her husband literally ostracized her from everybody in her life, and then this demon who basically feeds off hopelessness shows up and tells her, yeah, you're right, there's nothing left for you here, let me help you kill yourself. Like, that was obviously a toxic as hell story, so it's kind of been ignored here and there. Marvel Divas touched on it a little bit, there was some single issues that touched on it here and there, but Christopher Cantwell is really going into it, and he's doing it in a way that Patsy can face this horrible deep-seated darkness that's inside of her, but she has somebody here to help her through it, and that's Tony. And that's, while, like I said, he did kind of push her a little bit too far, and he had a little bit to do with this current break that she's in. him being there for her and intending to help now that he realizes what's going on is 100% what matters. So I'm really curious. I want to see her get back into fighting shape. Get her back into fighting shape. I want to see Patsy as Hellcat killing it again. We have Cable number 8, which goes along with Marauders number 18 as the 2 Reign of X books this week. Cable number 8, of course, by Gary Duggan and Phil Noto, who is one of my absolute favorite current interior artists, and this is going to be Cable and Domino, young Cable and Domino, going on an adventure together, and Marauders as, you know, whatever it is, but I'm more interested in the May issue, number 20, where apparently something is going to be happening with Storm, kicking off a new era with her. So I'm very interested. Is there going to be a Storm series that we haven't heard about? God, it has been long enough. Please give us another Storm series, and please let a black person write it. Yes, I said that because, honestly, it's necessary. Vita Ayala did such a great job with, she is Afro-Latinx, they are Afro-Latinx, and they did, it was a Marauders issue where Storm went and took the sword from Wakanda. It was, oh god, it was so good. I would say give Vita Ayala a Storm miniseries, honestly. I would read the shit out of that. Spider-Woman number 9 is not King in Black tie-ins, so you get a little bit of a breather there. I don't read Guardians of the Galaxy anymore, but I might pick up this issue because I need to know, did Al Ewing break up my cosmic space lesbians? That would be Viola Vale and Moondragon, Moondragon being technically 2 Moondragons turned into 1. I swear to God, if he used that as an excuse to break them up while he also tries to write off all of Star-Lord's bullshit that he's put everybody through all their lives, including the women he's dated and the times that he's cheated on them and mistreated them, he's trying to write all that off by saying, oh yeah, he's bi now, so he's a good No, he's not a good person. He's still the same piece of shit he is, and I swear to God, Al Ewing, if you were breaking up my space lesbians so that you can get more views on your stupid Star-Lord bullshit, oh my god, I will be so mad. But I don't know if they're actually broken up, so this is just speculation. I haven't been reading the series because I didn't really like what he was doing with it. Just let Star-Lord die. You keep killing him, just let him stay dead. Jesus. It's like the 3rd time he's died in 5 years. Anyway, moving on from that rant. Thor number 12, whatever, Donny Cates is doing Donny Cates stuff. And that actually wraps up this week's comics. That's, again, not everything I'm reading, and definitely not everything that's coming out. Definitely go to your local comic shop, tell them what you're interested in, what kind of things you like to read, and they would love to give you suggestions. I can guarantee it, no matter who you are, they would love to help you out. And I think that wraps up this week's podcast. This is the Monday episode. The next episode I'm going to have is going to be Friday the 19th. I didn't talk too much about other shows that are currently going, like Resident Alien and Snowpiercer, that are based off of comic properties, so I might save that for Friday's episode. But the main meat of Friday's episode is going to be, as Friday episodes usually are, reviewing and discussing the favorite and least favorite things that came out of this week's comics. So those comics that I just listed that I'll be reading this week, it will be a couple of those, probably 3 or 4 of those that I'll pick out and discuss those in depth. And then probably some other news and things that'll be going on, because it seems to be a very news-heavy period for various comic industry properties, you know? Between movies, TV shows, and comics themselves, there's a lot going on right now. There's been a lot of news, and I'm doing my best to keep up with it and keep it, you know, out here on my my podcast. Thank you once again for tuning in to this episode of Sensational She-Geek live at Yancy Street. My name is Anna. I am the Sensational She-Geek. You can find me online. My website is www.sensationalshegeek.weebly.com, because I don't put any money into that. I have an Instagram. It is at Anna with the Comics. My Twitter name is at Savage She-Geek, because sensational was too many letters. And then, let's see, I do bi-weekly podcast episodes, so I'll have one up again, like I said, Friday the 19th. And stay sweaty. Read some comics this week, get yourself real sweaty, and tell me what you think. Comment on the blog post, comment on the podcast. Let me know what your thoughts are on any of these topics. I would love to hear and get you involved. And in the meantime, stay sweaty.